older or younger than their date, perhaps just 1 year different. Thank you. Question. You said you attended study session at B20. You learned to type using the typewriter, and also you learn some Khmer letters. Can you tell the chamber in more detail what you learned actually? Response. I actually did not study typing, but I learned to decode telegrams. I think I didn't study to become a typist anyway. Counsel, thank you. I heard a lot about typewriter and that you study how to type. So to correct this record, is it fair to say that you did not study how to type but to decode telegrams? Please say that again. Response. Yes, I learned to decode telegrams. Question. What did you learn regarding the telegrams? Response. At that time, we learned how to understand the 10 digits kind of chart. Question. Can you explain to the chamber, please, what you mean by the 10-digit chart? Response. In the study session, we would be instructed on how to understand the square boxes. For example, the square columns with 10 columns. And then there would be number from 0 to 9, which is, and then we were instructed to convert or to decode this number, to understand the number and translate them into words. Question. Apart from these techniques, did you study other lessons? Response. No, I didn't. Thank you. Question. During the time you studied telegrams, how long was the training? Response. The training was about 1 month. Thank you. Question. After 1 month training, were you capable enough to decode the telegrams? And how did your instructor say about your performance? Response. At that time, there was no such assessment. After the session, I had to work with my father and be with him at my home village. Question. What was the instruction you were offered during the first time you allowed to decode some telegrams? Response. I don't recollect this. Question. I would like to ask you a few questions concerning K17. You said you spent some time there from 1974 all the way to 1977. You stay at K17 of Sector 105. What did you do there? Response. I was with my father helping him decode telegrams. Thank you. Between 1974 and 1977, you worked with your father on a regular basis helping him decode telegrams. Is that correct? Response. Yes, it is. Thank you. Question. Do you know whether there are other officers under K17 of Sector 105? Response. I don't remember this very well. It was something that happened a long time ago. Question. As a telegram decoder, did you work under the supervision of other person? Or were you in charge of the section and you had some subordinates? Response. I worked under the chairman of the office. Question. What kind of office was that? Counsel, please repeat. Response. It's office K17. Question. Allow me to seek some clarification on this. Your father was the secretary of the sector, and there was another chief for the office who was your father's subordinate but your boss. Is that correct? Response. Yes, it is. Thank you. Question. How many people were in your group, or were you there all by yourself? Response. Are you asking me about the people in my telegram decoding section? Counsel, thank you. Indeed, it was that matter. How many people were there in your group of the telegram decoding section? Response. At the beginning, I was alone, working as the decoder. Question. Until which year you continued working alone before you were joined by other people? Response. Later on, when I was joined by my sister, she also was joined by a few other people. Thank you. Question. Did K17 have other subsections? For example, section where people would be tasked with receiving the same telegrams as you did? Response. No, there was none subsection. Question. So, is it our understanding that there is no section for receiving radio communication other than your section? So, who received all the telegrams? Did you do that or your superior? Response. I am not quite sure I understand your question. Are you talking about telegrams decoders or the radio communication personnel? Response, rather question. I am asking you about the radio communication section because you said you worked alone as the decoder until the time when you were joined by your sister and other people. My question is about the radio communication. Indeed, who actually received all the telegrams? You worked as a decoder, but who received all these telegrams, incoming telegrams? Response. We had different people and staff member who worked at the radio communication section. Council, thank you. Question. I would like to seek some clarification from you concerning document E3/58, the record of interview you gave before the co-investigating judges. Under ERN in Khmer 00239936. I would like to now proceed to give the chamber the ERN numbers in English. Council, I would like to read the Khmer version to you first, and I would then proceed to give the ERN numbers in French and English. I am now looking for the relevant pages. So please read listen to me. In this document, it is on page number 3, and I believe that it would be on the same page of the English and French version, but I will be looking for the right page for you. On this page, you indicated that in 1975 to late 1977, I went to Phnom Krau at K17 office where the provincial committee members worked. I would like to seek some clarification concerning the terms you use. Provincial committee. Were these the right terms used at that time? Did they use provincial committee members or sector members or sector committee members? Response. At that time, some people would refer to this as the sector committee or secretary of sector 105. There was no such official language used. It was about the routine where people would be using. Council, thank you. I would like to read and in English for you. 0025 0088. French 0028 3914. So, you said that it is not quite sure for you. Provincial committee member could have been the committee members of the sector. Is that what you indicated? Please answer again. Response. Sometimes they used both terms interchangeably. Thank you. Under the same ERN number, both Khmer English and French shares the same ERN number. I move to the next or the following question. You said with regard to the instructions from the center to K17 for any arrest, such order or instruction was not ever seen. Do you still stand by your statement? Response. I do, yes, because at that time there was no such order for arrest. People could be convened to work and they disappeared. That's all. Thank you. Question. Can you also confirm, as to the best of your knowledge, that there was no such order for arrest? How could you be so sure? As a telegram recorder, or you received some telegrams, what made you conclude that there was no such instruction or orders? Response. At that time, some telegrams were of strictly secret or confidential, and I perhaps did not know all about this. Some other people could have been called to attend study sessions at the upper level, which is beyond my knowledge. Question. As a telegram decoder, are you now saying you had no knowledge of ever having received any instructions or orders in the telegrams for any arrest? So could you just confirm that it is the case? You haven't received any kind of instructions through the telegrams on the arrests? Response. I can confirm, because if there was such order, then I would be able to read from the telegrams, but there was none. Counsel for Mr. Kyo Sompon. Thank you, Mr. President. I have no more questions, but I would like to cede the floor to my colleague to proceed with further questions. The President, Counsel, you may proceed.
Good morning, sir. I do have a few questions to ask you. My name is Arthur Verke, and I represent Mr. Kyo Sompon. I shouldn't need so much time, but to begin, I wish to quote from your written record of interview of witness. You were asked a question during the first day of your testimony by the co-prosecutor. I'm referring to the first interview that you took part in with the investigators on the 21st of November. It's E358. ERN in French is 002839115. In Khmer, 0023994. And in English, 002500088. So that it's perfectly clear, once again, the ERNs in Khmer 002839934. ERN in English 002500088. During the interview, the investigators asked you the following question, and I quote, from where were you doing your work, and to whom did you address the telegrams? And you answered, most of the time I sent the confidential telegrams to Office 870. For issues relating to equipment, healthcare, or social affairs, and matters other than security, I had to use plain language, non-coded, and I sent them to Kyo Sompon, alias Hem. And when he sent back his instructions and assignments, he signed them and he used the name Hem. For instance, when he handed out assignments to the sector level, then this sector K-17 and would support at the central levels to the trade or economic section to receive logistical support at the central levels, such as petroleum, machinery, medicines, and cloth. In turn, the center also requested the sector to send it husked rice. You then talk about security work, and you stated that you had sent some messages. My first question to you is this. During the entire time that you worked within the telegram section, can you please confirm the breakdown of work that was achieved within the section as you had declared before the co-investigators?
I do not understand the question. I don't know whether or not you are asking me about the distribution of materials, or what kinds of distribution are you talking about?
Je viens de vous lire une déposition et je vous...
I've just read a statement, and what I'm asking you is if today you still agree with its contents.
I do not understand your question really, because according to what you read just now and the statement I made, I stand by it.
Donc vous avez compris, puisque c'est ce que...
Thank you. Well, that shows me that you have understood. I was asking you for a yes or no answer. It was a very simple question, actually. And now, I would like you to give me a little more detail. During the time when you were working for the telegram service, do you remember seeing orders from M specifically relating to rice?
No, I don't. What I can recall is that people did send rice to our sector, and the person who sent this was Ham.
D'accord.
All right. Did Hem, que son pas, in other words, send and receive telegrams on security, all kinds of security in your sector or region?
No, he had nothing to do with security. I did not see his name involving in security matters.
Lorsque...
In that piece I read out, you said that exchanges of mail, of telegrams with Hem were non-confidential in nature. Can you give us some idea of exactly what that means when you say non-confidential?
Because at that time they did not encode the secret numbers. So this literally means that the communication was not confidential. By literal numbers, I mean that the numbers that we actually studied at school, everyone would understand it easily. And letters as well used in that telegram communication were the literal characters which ordinary people would understand it.
Et vous avez vu...
And when you were working in the telegram service, you saw such non-coded letters going through the service from Hem.
Yes, I did see them, and I did make this statement already with the investigator of the OCIJ.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Can you enlighten me on one point which may seem slightly odd to you about some wording that has been used? Because in some telegrams that were shown to you, it starts, the telegram I mean, starts Office 870 and then beloved, or rather the other way around, beloved Office 870. Now in French that sounds a little bit strange. When you say beloved in French, at least, that would be for an individual rather than for an office. Is there anything you can tell us about why Office 870 was given the name Beloved?
I do not understand the term used, the specific meaning it conveyed, but it was common that in the salutation they would close the letter with this, and I was not actually well educated. I do not really understand how it was arranged.
Tout à l'heure,
Coming back to some statements made in this court by other witnesses, to whom, in fact, I had asked the same question about the significance given to that term. For example, E1 stroke 851, 85.1, French ARN 0081 7423, Khmer 008167222, and English 00817536. This is a witness statement to this court, an expert on telegram matters, and I asked this person the meaning of to Office 870, much respected, much missed, and that witness answered that in point of fact such telegrams were destined to Pol Pot. Would you agree with that particular witness, or do you continue to be unaware of the significance of that way of addressing people as beloved?
I am not knowledgeable of this. I did not know whether or not M870 was another name for Pol Pot, or it was referred to as a committee, because at that time leaders were actually from this office. That's what we knew when we were at the sector at the time.
But when you encoded telegrams to Kyosampan, you addressed them to him. Am I right?
Yes, you are.
et j'ai une dernière.
Thank you. One last question on this. It seems to me that in an answer you've just given to my colleague Saman Kong, you acknowledge quite happily that you worked with your father in the telegram section up to 1977, in other words, the year of his death. And you said this a moment ago. It's not always been terribly clear in your statements precisely which period you were decoding telegrams in. So I'd like to ask you if the date you gave a few minutes ago is in fact the right one, that it's a job you were doing up to 1977.
I stayed with him up until 1977. I was a driver at that time, but I worked as a telegram decoder just up until 1 year after the war. It was not sometimes in 1977, but it was sometime in 1975 or early 1976. Then I left this job. I was a driver. I do not recall the exact year, but if you want to find out precisely when, I have to spend some time to recall or conduct further research in order to find out the exact date. And once again, I did not do the job as a telegram decoder up until 1977, but I did stay with my father until 1977, but I do not recall the exact date. It has been quite a long time. But I think that uncles might still recall them very well because they might have kept a good record of it.
Et
you testified that your sister took over from you. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
et
And when she replaced you, were you still working on decoding?
No, I no longer worked as in decoding. My sister took my place.
oui, mais au
Yes, but when she came, that's when you went. In other words, did she arrive at precisely the moment you left?
That is correct.
alors
Perhaps so that we can zone in more closely on these dates, let me tell you that a telegram was in fact shown to you a couple of days ago by the prosecutor. It's the third telegram that you were shown, which is E3 stroke 1195. In the French ERN, it's 00531 088. In the Khmer, it's 00057296. And in the English, 00519519. It's dated 25th of November 1976, and the prosecutor asked you some questions about this telegram, which is addressed to Comrade Bong from your father. And as you explained, it makes reference to your sister Bopan I do believe that it was she who replaced you in the telegram service. Is that correct, sir?
That is correct.
Et dans ce télégramme,
And in the 25th of November 1976 telegram, your father says to Pong that he has asked your sister to attend a course on confidential documents, and he asks for some help with that. So if we can trust the telegram, it would appear that on the 25th of November 1976, in other words, at the end of that particular year, your sister had not yet been trained in how to decode confidential telegrams. Does this enlighten your memory, witness?
President, witness, please hold on. Mr. Prosecutor, you may proceed.
Merci, Mr. Thank you, Mr. President, and good day to you, sir, and to the judges. I do have a question about the way in which this query was put, because, yes, indeed, it does say in the document that I assigned Bopan to attend the course on confidential documents, but it doesn't necessarily mean that she had had no training prior to that. It could be a kind of continuous training or some sort of refresher course. There could be other reasons, and so I think the question should take account of that. The counsel, I have an objection to that objection, because your objection, Mr. Prosecutor, is also somewhat suggestive to the witness. Depending on the answer I got from the witness, I was intending to build on what the sister herself said when she was heard. So I do believe that at this juncture the witness can answer the perfectly open question I gave him about what conclusions he draws from this telegram.
President, witness is not supposed to provide any answers that he may speculate. So your question should be more specific in relation to what he has known or he has come across. Your question should not be suggestive. It should be put in a manner that he can reflect upon his own experience.
oui, c'est bien mon...
Thank you, Mr. President. That is certainly my intention. Witness. In this courtroom, you commented on a telegram in which your father refers to your sister, who took over from you, to have some training. Now, how do you explain this telegram, which is dated 25th of November 1976, and which refers to the training for your sister? What thoughts does this inspire you with, please?
That I do not know. I did not know whether or not she came to undertake further training or not. But actually, she had mastered the skill before she came to take my place. She had been trained earlier on how to decode telegrams.
pas d'autres questions.
Mr. President, I have no further questions. Thank you.
President. Thank you, Counsel. Now I hand over to the defense team for Mr. Evidentiary to put the questions to the witness. You may proceed, Counsel.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors, and good morning to everyone in and around the courtroom. And good morning, sir. I'm Michael Carnavas, and I represent, along with Mr. Angudom, Mr. Evidentiary. Let me begin by focusing again on your age. I've looked at your statements, and you told the investigators that you were born in 1960. Today you told us plus or minus 1 year. When you gave that answer to the investigators that you were born in 1960, did you qualify it? In other words, that you didn't actually know the year and actual date of your birth, but you could have been born as early as 1959 or as late as 1961.
When the investigator asked me, we actually discussed this as well. I could not qualify it as to when I exactly was born. I asked my siblings. They could not tell me, and I asked people whom I knew. They did not know exactly, but I could only say that I was born around 1960.
All right. Thank you. Now, when you asked your siblings, was that during the interview, before, or after the interview?
No, I had asked them long before the interview was conducted, when I was registering for identification card.
Okay, thank you. So then I go back to my original question. Since they could not tell you, did you inform the investigators at the time when they asked you for your date of birth? Did you tell them, I do not know, it might be 1960, it might be 59, it might be 61? Did you actually say that? Or did you just give them December 1960?
I told them that I was not clear. The investigator at that time told me that I could tell from the identification card. So the date was taken from the identification card.
Thank you for that clarification. Now, I want to focus initially the time when you were a driver. Realizing that you don't know the exact year of your birth, do you know how old you were when you became a driver?
I do not know exactly how old I was at that time, but I think it could have been around 18 or 17 years of age.
Well, could it have been 16 or 15, since you don't know when you were actually born?
No, it couldn't have been 15 years old, because at that time, if I recall it correctly, I could drive big trucks as well. So it could not have been 15 years.
Okay. Is that because there was a prohibition during that period that 15-year-olds could not drive big trucks? Or is it because you were too short to reach the pedals of the truck, and that would have disqualified you in being a driver?
Yeah, my leg could not press the pedal. I could not do it. And the strength as well. I did not have enough strength if I were 15 years at that time.
All right. And what about 16? At 16, were you tall enough to reach the pedals and strong enough to manage the wheel?
Well, if I was strong enough at that age, I could drive it. It would have been even better.
Well, that doesn't answer my question. The thrust of my question actually is do you know for certain whether you were 17 or 18, or could you be as young as 16 at the time when you were driving, when you were a driver here in Phnom Penh?
No, it could not have been the case.
All right. Let me move on. Now, as a driver, was part of your function to attend meetings? In other words, not to merely drive individuals from point A to point B, but to also attend the meetings.
No, I didn't.
Did you at least go inside the meeting room so you could see who is conducting the meeting, who are participating in the meetings?
As the drivers, I simply took the people to the meeting hall and I dropped them there. It was none of my business to enter into the business room. I only knew that the meeting was between these individuals and that individuals, but I did not enter the meeting room.
All right. Now, how close to the meeting room would you drive up to?
Response. As close as to the gate.
Are we speaking about the gate leading into the compound where the meetings would have taken place? Or are we talking about the gate of the building itself? Which of the two?
Response. Indeed, it's the outside gate of the compound.
And from the outside gate of the compound, could you please tell us how far the buildings or building would have been where these meetings would have taken place?
Response. I went to several places. I don't know which place you refer to, because every time I would stop at the gate. At some places, the gate would be further from the building. At some places, the building was closer to the gate.
And when you would be waiting, I assume that you were waiting while the meeting was going on. Were you inside the compound or outside the gate? Which of the two?
Response. As a driver, I had to make sure that I am with the car and in the car, so it is outside of the compound.
And were there walls around these compounds, or fenced, or just open?
Response. In some places, it was in the open, but in some places there were some walls or fence.
And while you were waiting outside in your car, were you carrying on having conversations with the guards to find out what the meetings were about, who was meeting, and what the topics may have been?
Response. No, I wasn't.
Now, on the way to the meetings, did you, being the driver that is, have conversations with the passengers, whoever they may have been, as far as what they were up to, where they were going, who they would be meeting, what they would be discussing?
Response. No, I didn't.
And when the meetings ended and you had to drive those individuals back to wherever you were taking them, did you engage or did they engage with you in conversation to give you an update as to what may have happened during the meeting, who attended, what was spoken, what was resolved?
Response. No, I didn't.
Let me now switch to before you became a driver. You told us of your functions. I don't want to go into that. I just wish to touch upon a couple of issues concerning your father's position. You told us that he was the secretary of the sector. That's correct?
Response. Yes, it is.
And that's a pretty important position, is it not?
Response. I can't say whether it was important or not, but I knew that he was the secretary of the sector.
All right. Well, help me out here now, because you told us about decoding secret messages. You told us about purges. You told us all sorts of details. And I'm at a loss now, because now you're telling us, having lived through that period, being intimate with your father, being intimate with his work, you don't know how important his position would have been. Is that your testimony today?
Response. I'm afraid I do not understand your question, because you seem to stress the term important in that context.
All right, let me clarify it. In the sector itself, was there someone above your father's level within the sector?
Response. No.
All right. Now, from that simple answer, can we conclude that at least within the sector, your father is the most important person? Or should we have doubts?
Response. As long as that regime concerned, yes, we can.
All right. Now, if I understand you correctly, you're doubting the fact that your father was the most important or most powerful person in the sector when he was secretary of the sector, with no one above him within the sector?
Response. Personally, if we look into today's situation and compare it to the previous regime during the time when my father was holding that position, I do not see that such position was that important because he was assigned duties.
Well, thank you for making that comparison, but we're talking about the events back then, not what you may think of what a secretary of a sector does today. So can you please tell us, do you have any doubts as to whether your father was not the most powerful person in the sector when he was secretary? It's a simple yes or no. Or maybe I just don't know.
Response. I still believe that he was not a person of important position or with great power.
All right, thank you. Now, we know that you were working for your father and coding and decoding confidential or secret messages. Did your father, by any chance, describe his functions to you? Exactly what he did, what his role was, what his responsibilities were at the time as secretary of the sector?
Response. No, he didn't.
Did your father at any time hold secret meetings with individuals while he was secretary of the sector?
Response. No, he didn't.
Well, did he hold meetings?
Response. Yes, he did.
And during those meetings, were you present?
Response. No, I wasn't.
Is that because the meetings were supposed to be confidential? Or is it because you were not in a position to be in attendance of those meetings?
Response. The latter is correct.
All right. Well, if you did not attend the meetings because you were not qualified or competent in your position, that is, to attend the meetings, did your father at least tell you in advance what those meetings were about, and then after perhaps tell you what occurred during the meetings?
Response. He didn't tell me anything because I was not in a position to be informed of the update. He could have talked to his colleagues or his people about this.
Or did you ask him any questions to give you an update on who he was meeting with, what decisions or what topics were being discussed, what decisions were being reached, what orders were being given?
Response. No, I didn't. I wouldn't dare. And again, he was not bound to tell me anything about the update.
And is that because during that period, secrecy was a very important factor for anyone, especially for someone who would have a position such as secretary of a sector.
Response. Yes, it is correct. At that time, people were asked to mind his or her business only.
And I take it that you minded your business as well.
Response. That was a policy.
Policy is one thing, practice is another. I just want to get a confirmation from you, sir. Did you follow the policy?
Response. Yes, I did. No one dare challenge such policy.
Thank you. Now, you told us that on occasion your father would go to Phnom Penh and on occasion you would go as well. Did you accompany him to those meetings, or again were you left outside?
Response. I was left outside because when I was in Phnom Penh, I could not accompany him all the way to the meeting. I would be dropped at the Commerce Office.
And again, if I may press for clarification, at least with those meetings, now the meetings in Phnom Penh, did your father tell you what the meetings were about before and maybe give you an update after the meetings to keep you abreast on the situation?
Response. No, he didn't. He didn't tell me anything.
And just to make sure that I'm very, very clear on this point, or that we are clear on this point, when you were in Phnom Penh, did you attend any important meetings or assemblies where important decisions would have taken place?
Response. No, I didn't.
And just as a follow-up, did anyone other than you told us about your father, but did anyone else ever inform you of what might have been taking place, what topics might have been discussed, and decisions reached at these meetings or assemblies?
Response. No, they didn't.
Thank you. Now, for my last topic, I just want to briefly touch upon your interview, or I should say interviews. I couldn't help but notice that when you were giving evidence with the prosecution asking questions, there were at times that your memory needed to be refreshed on what you had told the investigators because you simply could not remember. Do you have an explanation as to how is it that you had such vivid knowledge and detailed knowledge when you were giving interviews to the investigators, yet only a few years later you do not possess those details?
Response. I may explain as follows. During the time, like for example, in this courtroom, questions were bombarded at me quickly at the same time on one day or two. But during the interviews, people came to me and they set up the environment where we could converse. It's more like a kind of conversational setting, so I could have some time to recollect the events. But here, I find it difficult because it takes me some time to phrase my wordings, and I'm not a person who read and write very well, so it is a burden for me.
That explains it. That's I understand. I hope I haven't been bombarding you with questions. Been taking it rather slow. But let me ask you, when you were conducting these interviews in this sort of conversational style setting where you could gather your thoughts and collect your memories, did the investigators talk to you before you went on tape to sort of get a sense of what knowledge you had, how good your memory was?
Response. The tape, our conversation was tape recorded time and again after some conversation.
All right, now there may have been a translation problem, or you may have misspoken. I just want to make very clear. Are you saying that there was a conversation first and then you would go on tape? Because that's how it appeared in translation.
Response. No, I think that's not the case. The conversation had to go on the tape simultaneously. And then we would be talking, and then we would went on tape, and if something went wrong, then we would correct and record it.
I'm not sure I fully understand that last part. What do you mean if something went wrong? Because it would appear that one way of interpreting that is if the correct answer wasn't given, then you were given an opportunity to clean it up after looking at some documents, maybe having your memory refreshed. So please tell us exactly what do you mean by that?
The President, Mr. Witness, please hold on, and International Co-Prosecutor, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe that the last question must be reformulated so that it is phrased in a way that is open, which would allow the witness to reply freely without having any suggestions made to him. Thank you, Mr. President.
Your Honor, Mr. President, Your Honors, I said how. The classic open-ended questions are who, what, where, how, explain, describe. It was a how. How did this occur? He said that it would be corrected. What exactly happened? Would they go off tape? Or would it be corrected on the spot? Was he shown documents? If you could please describe exactly how the interviews occurred.
Response. I may wish you to repeat that question.
Okay. You told us that when you were interviewed, you were tape recorded. And then you seemed to say that if there was a problem, it would be corrected. Now, that's what's being translated, so I have to work off the translation. My apologies if I'm getting it wrong. Now, when you say if there was a problem, what do you mean by that, and how was it corrected?
Response. It was not a kind of error or mistake made during that time. But, for example, when I talked something which is not about the truth, and I would be given the opportunity to play back the tape and make sure that the version of the event is corrected so that we get the truth.
And thank you very, very much for that. And that's what I want clarification. Because you seem to be telling us that as you're giving your version, at some point the investigator would think that you're not telling the truth. He would stop the tape recording. You would listen to it. Perhaps there would be an exchange. And then you would be given an opportunity to correct the version that you had previously given. Is that what happened?
Response. Yes, it is. We correct something that is not true. For example, when we have to recollect something that happened in the past without some recorded pieces of evidence to support our memory, then we may be wrong. And at that same time, as you may be aware that during the old days, people did not keep good records of what had actually happened. In my memory, things that happened to me, I still remember how they happened, but I just could not confirm precisely when exactly they happened, although they did. That's why with this conversation and the refresh of my memory, I could really correct the events precisely.
All right. Now, when they were refreshing your memory, I take it was the investigator refreshing your memory.
Response. They didn't refresh my memories actually, but they asked me questions to help me recall. For example, they asked me question where I was yesterday, and I said I was at Comrade A's home, and then they would say, but you said it was at Comrade B, things like that. So this is how it happened. But the way questions were put to me helped me correct the event or remember the event.
Well, in putting those questions to you, were they not also suggesting what the answers might be in order for you to give a confirmation?
Response. Please repeat that question.
Well, when correcting you, were they also suggesting what the right answer was in order for you to correct your memory and to have something accurate on the tape?
Response. Yes, that is correct. They would like to confirm to make sure that I really said the right events. The President, legal lawyer for the civil party, you may now proceed. Counsel Big Ang, Mr. President, thank you very much. I think I have a kind of doubt. Counsel Canavas were talking about the co-investigating judges who may correct the witness statement. So it would be fair if counsel also ask what kind of version that the investigators corrected during that time.
Mr. President, lawyers normally don't stand up and voice their doubts. They voice objections. The gentleman had an opportunity to question the witness. The witness obviously understands my questions. They're rather clear. If he has doubts, then perhaps he can seek leave to ask for further questions. but I'll go step by step to make sure that we have a very clear record as to how these interviews were conducted. Now, you told us thus far that the investigators would help you with your memory. Did they also show you any documents as verification in order to get you to understand the dates or the places or the names during the interview?
Response: No.
All right. And with that, sir, I wish to thank you for giving your evidence here and thank the trial chamber for allowing me the opportunity to pose these questions. And we want to thank you, sir, and wish you good luck and safe travels.
The President. Counsel, you're on your feet. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. I didn't get a chance yesterday before I left the courtroom to properly thank the witness. Thank you, Mr. Witness, for answering some of my questions yesterday. I'm sorry we didn't have a chance to have more of a conversational exchange, as you put it, but I am grateful for the answers that you did provide, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Mr. President, Mr. Panwan, your testimony has now come to a conclusion and you are now excused. You may be let out of this room very soon, and the chamber would like to thank you very much indeed for your time and efforts and patience. Your testimony will be helping the court in finding the truth, and we would like to wish you all the very best and safe travels. Counsel or jury counsel for Mr. Panwan is also excused. You may leave now, and court officer is now instructed to usher both of them, and the court will adjourn for 20 minutes. The next session will resume by 10 to 11 when we hear testimonies of TCW 695.
សូមក្រោកឈរ